on the screen. It'll be back up there in a moment. And we're going to continue to show you that. Laura is also the host of Lara Logan Has No Agenda on Fox Nation. Laura, what can you tell us tonight as we're watching these live pictures?
Well, Laura, I've been talking to law enforcement sources all day and seen some of the data that they're dealing with, which shows that there are numerous incidents and mounting evidence of anarchist involvement in these protests. They're not just exploiting and hijacking it, but they're coordinating it and escalating it. And I would, I can point you, for example, to an incident on the 29th of May in Louisville, Kentucky, where law enforcement sources say that as police were trying to respond to a violent incident, extremist anarchist groups used the Black Bloc, which is a kind of, it's part of the movement. They like to call it a movement. And these are the people that you often see who are dressed all in black. According to law enforcement, they use black clothing, face coverings, and other protection to conceal their identities. And here, what's interesting about what they do is they intercept police communications. They monitor police traffic. They use secure communications. They know where the police are going to go, and they know how to stop law enforcement responding to these incidents. And all of that is about escalation. You talked about people being in the face of police officers. That's about provoking a reaction. What do they want? They want to return to May 4th, 1970, when someone in the National Guard opened fire and innocent protesters, were massacred, right? Those old pictures, if you look them up, of hippies putting flowers in the barrels of National Guard guns, and then the result is ultimately that innocent people are dead. That's what they're trying to get, that kind of image. And law enforcement is gathering case after case after case that document this, which is kind of extraordinary when you look at all the propaganda, not just coming from the anarchists themselves and their political backers, but coming from the media as well.
Now, here's what former Antifa admirer, Minnesota AG Keith Ellison, said about the group's involvement in the riots.
So far, they have been very elusive, and they have operated with, I would say, military precision. And I don't know where they're from, and I don't know what their ideology is.
And what intelligence must the president and his attorney general, Bill Barr, must be using? Because they're pinning all of this violence on one group, Antifa.
They're operating based on political considerations, not facts.
Laura, has he not watched any of the video of the protests?
Well, maybe he's forgotten what he tweeted on his own feed, right? Because he put out a picture of himself holding Mark Bray's Antifa, manual handbook and there was a catch line on that tweet that's since been removed from his Twitter account, of course, which said, this manual strikes fear in the heart of Donald Trump. And, just a few days ago, his son tweeted out that he stood in full support of Antifa. So if you want to talk about political considerations, the depth of the hypocrisy there is breathtaking, right? And also he's ignoring apparently what his own law enforcement agencies are reporting to him, because in Minneapolis the police are talking about stashes of incendiary devices and stolen vehicles, and literally the streets filled with cars pouring in from out of town. And what's interesting, Laura, is it's all consistent, right? You'll have people say, well, Antifa's not a group and they're just a movement, and all these idiots on the right, they don't know what they're talking about. But look at the consistency with which these people are operating. They're always dressed the same. They use the same tactics. They happen to be on every single street in every single city in the United States right now where there are fires raging and protests, and no, not protests, riots, right? And they're using the same messaging everywhere. That kind of consistency speaks to real organization, real infrastructure, training, funding, financing, and the kind of equipment they're using. This is not some ad hoc kind of emotional outpouring. These are people with a very, very well-developed political agenda, and they're carrying it out.
Yeah, and tomorrow night we're going to get into this Nation story, Laura. Maybe we'll have you back, where they claim a field report from the FBI that they got their hands on states that they couldn't find any evidence of Antifa all throughout the last weekend. So we'll get into more of that. We couldn't confirm that obviously ourselves, but I find that laughable.
They must be blind, Laura, deaf, dumb, and blind.
Yeah, exactly. Laura, thanks so much. And as we